today. Last Friday, we all woke up to the tragic news that our ALDE party president, Hans van Baalen, had passed away. Hans was a true liberal who fought for democracy in Europe and across the world his entire political career and his entire life. That's also one of the reasons why Hans felt so very strongly and passionate about the Conference on the Future of Europe, and for making sure that we as liberals and as the ALDE party would do our utmost to make sure that this doesn't just become a PR exercise, but a genuine listening exercise, a genuine deliberative democracy process. And that's also why today we wanted to maintain this event to launch the ALDE Party Action Plan on the Conference on the Future of Europe. And we want to really do it in Hans's honor. And that's why in just a half a minute, I'll hand over the floor to Mr. Lambsdorff, one of our ALDE Party vice presidents and long-term colleague and friend to Hans, to say a few words in his memory. And I believe Ms. Woutmans and Ms. Asenova would also like to say a few words. We'll then do a 1 minute of silence in Hans's memory, after which we will proceed with the subject matter at hand, which is indeed to discuss the future of Europe, where our esteemed speakers will very shortly give their opening remarks as to their thoughts on the future of Europe. And then really we will open it up to your questions, to have this kind of very open dialogue, to hear what is your passions, what are your priorities. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Mr. Lambsdorff, and I look forward to this event.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. It's a very sad opportunity, and I'm a most imperfect replacement for Hans. But we here at the ALDE Party have to really realize the shock of his loss. It was a very intense shock. Just last week, a week ago, essentially, more or less, we had our final bureau meeting, and Hans was there throughout, totally present, leading the party as was his usual style, giving ideas, insights, and inspiration. And so for someone like me who has known Hans from a time when the ALDE wasn't even called the ALDE, but the European Liberals, Democrats and Reformers, the ELDR, it's also a personal loss, very much so. Hans was a faithful friend. Behind me, you see the River Rhine in West Germany. I'm from the German liberals, and our political fortunes go up and down in this country. And throughout, even when we were down and out, he would, come to our events, represent ELDR or ALDE or the VVD, his mother party in the Netherlands. So he was always there to help, to assist. We worked together for many years in the European Parliament. We shared a passion for diplomacy. We shared a passion for developing a global role for the European Union, something that I think the past few months have revealed to be even more urgent than it has been over the last few years, with some of the more unfortunate events that we had to witness. He was also, and those who know Hans and have worked with him for a long time, he was an extremely hardworking man. We stayed at the same hotel in Strasbourg in our plenary weeks, and it didn't really matter when I came down from my room, he was already sitting there working. He was somebody who really believed in the mission of liberalism, the mission of liberty, of freedom, of democracy. And he felt that passion, that he wanted to bring it to other people. It was something that really characterized him as a person, as a human being, but also characterized him as a human being. And that's something that many people oversee when they only see him saw him in a formal role. He was a very warm-hearted person, very popular, because he was, I'd say as a man myself, he was a nice guy. I mean, he was simply a nice guy, and he would never, ever let political differences get, in the way of a harmonious personal relationship. So he had the respect of political opponents as well, from the conservatives, the socialists, the Greens. Everybody knew what he stood for. He was very straightforward. He was very diplomatic. He was, as Guy Verhofstadt wrote, a very crafty compromise maker. He could negotiate very well, but he would also always see to it that whatever your political differences, personal matters were important to him, and that there was always personal respect. Now, Hans, today we all speak English. English is the Latin of our days, as I say, but Hans was a very good German speaker. He spoke German fluently, and so he came to Germany not only to our party congresses, either when we were up or down. He was also a member of the supervisory board of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. And to those of you who don't know what the Naumann Foundation for Freedom is, it is the, I would say, academic, intellectual think tank, a branch of organized liberalism, A, in Germany, but B, really around the world, because it's a foundation that has a global presence, is to be found everywhere, and is also, I would say, a great organizational help for another passion of Hans's, and that's Liberal International. The Naumann Foundation has offices in South Africa, West Africa, North America, in many European countries. And Liberal International brings together liberals really from around the world. And what made the foundation so important to Hans was that, as somebody who believed so deeply in liberal values, the foundation for him was like a muscle he could use to carry the message around the world. And it was truly and really important to him to be part of the supervisory board. I still remember how happy he was when he was invited, because it really meant something to him. And Liberal International, of course, did as well. And that is my final thought, perhaps, because it's something that also links the two of us on a personal level. Hans was a fighter for liberals and Democrats in particularly difficult countries, in authoritarian systems, under very dire circumstances. Our Russian friends, for example, could always turn to him. Friends in North Africa and other African countries, or in the Arab world. People who fought for freedom of conscience, freedom of action, freedom of the press, independence of the judiciary. All of these things, they were so dear to Hans. And with the Naumann Foundation and Liberal International, he could turn this passion into a global endeavor. And so we miss him already, but I know Hans is missed around the world. And having said all that, my thoughts, of course, are with his wife and his young son, who lost their husband and father far too early. Hans was merely 6 years older than I am. I'm 54, he was 60. And it's such a terrible loss at such an early stage. So my thoughts are with Ineke and Robert, his family, his immediate family, with his friends in the VVD, with our friends here in the ALDE, but also with our liberal friends around the world. Okay, these would be my thoughts that I would share about Hans. I could go on and on and on, but I think we want to come to what also was his passion, the future of Europe from a liberal perspective, which is what we have gathered here for.
No, thank you very much. Those were very, very moving remarks. Ms. Varsmans, I believe you also wanted to say a few words.
Well, very short, because I think my colleague Alexander said already a lot of very nice words. I will always remember Hans as one of the liberals who really fought for a more liberal world. Like Alexander said, he was always working. He was never tireless of convincing people of the liberalism. And what I will remember of Hans is his humor. He was always laughing. He was always in for a good thought. And every time, I will promise you, every time that I will drink a good glass of red wine in the future, I will think of Hans. Because Hans was really born to change the world, and he changed all our lives. I can honestly say that since I heard of his death, I really am emotional, because he was a good colleague, but he was a friend. and he will be missed around the world. Like Alexander said, he changed a lot of lives. He changed because he was always open for a good conversation. He was always open to listen. He was always open for a joke, but he was always open to fight for liberalism. And honestly, I hope that his family will remember this, because he will be missed by us, but of course he will be missed especially by his wife and his son. So I want to thank, because for me it was difficult today of this seminar, because I was used to see Hans on these kinds of meetings. So today I will tell Hans, Hans, we really love you, you will be missed, but we will continue fighting for liberalism in your spirit every day of our life. Thank you very
much. Thank you very much. Again, this is almost choking me up. Ms. Asanova, please.
Thank you very much. Please do refer to me as Antoinette. It's something I shared soon after I learned the news. There was my first memory from my first ex officio presence at an ALDE party meeting when I was elected as president for Limec. We were having this meeting of the ALDE party, and I was super nervous because it was my first time with playing ball with the grown-ups, so to say. And I was referring to everybody with Mr. Van Balen, Mr. Lambsdorff, Mr. this, Mr. that, or Mrs. And at some point he just interrupted me and said, "Dear Antoinette, please, we're all equals here. So I'm Hans. We stand at the same floor." And that was something he was doing for the youth always. I clearly remember at the last physical congress, at the ALDE Congress in Athens, when he got re-elected, he was running unopposed. And yet when we asked from Limec to hold a meeting with him and ask him some questions as a candidate, he put a full hour for us to answer our questions. Even though we had not that many votes as other delegations, he insisted that the voice of the youth has to be heard, has to be reflected, and has to be taken into account. And this is something that I cannot stress enough. He really cared about what the young people have to say. And my presence today at this event, where we were supposed to debate together what the Conference for the Future of Europe would entail, is a very clear example of this, because he didn't invite a commissioner or someone from the council, or even a young MEP from the group. He wanted to know the voice of the youth organization that belongs to the ALDE party, as the organization that brings together the voices of young people all around Europe. And for that, I'm always grateful. He used to say always, liberals must unite. And I think at the wake of his loss, this is exactly what we have to do. Liberals all over and all structures. We need to work for this conference because he believed in it.
Thank you. And something else that he always used to say was, let's go forward together. So let's go forward together. But let's first pay 1 minute of silence in Hans's contribution. And Daniela, if you don't mind sharing the photo now as well of Hans, and then I'll start the timer. So 1 minute of silence for ALDE Party President, Mr. Hans van Balen. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this. And again, thank you to all our speakers as well for your very kind and very thoughtful words. Now, with that, as said, let's move forward together. So, and also in Hans's spirit, I'm going to use your first name as well. So Alexander, please, if you would kick us off just to share at your high level your introductory remarks on the future of Europe, please.
Okay, thank you very much. It's an all-encompassing topic, and I have been given 2 to 3 minutes to deal with it. So what I will do, Kate, if you agree, is I will sketch some broad lines, some broad strokes, and then in the Q&A, we will follow up, I think, on those issues that Hilde, that Antoinetta bring as well, and which interest our audience mostly. First of all, I think my personal conviction is we as Europeans have a particular European way of life, a way of living that we should be conscious of and that we have developed over the last decades, and that has a value, that's something really truly valuable. It's based, and that is the important thing, the important contribution that we as liberals have made and continue to make. It's based on the notion of liberty. It is based on individual liberty, it's based on tolerance, it's based on non-discrimination, it's based on diversity. That is the basis of our European way of life. We then have the market economy, we have the rule of law. We in Europe value social cohesion. We value environmental protection and protecting the climate. We know that our challenges lie in the green and digital transformation, because of course our economy right now as it is not very, very sustainable. As Europeans also, we have to be open-hearted, open-minded, but we also have to have an open perspective towards our neighborhood, Southeastern Europe, for example, a region that has European aspirations, but has a very difficult political present. So I think our European way of life, this really particular way of living that distinguishes us from all other regions of the world, is something that I think the Conference on the Future of Europe should bear in mind when it drafts this policy or that policy. And I say this very consciously, in making reference to, as we all know, the American way of life. Their notion of liberty is they're based on liberty as well, but their way of life is different. So is the Australian way of life. So is the Japanese way of life. They are our fellow democracies, our fellow our friends who have constitutions and societies who cherish liberty, but their way of life is different. So there is a particular European way of life, but it must never be exclusive. It must never be a way of life that excludes people, but that is tolerant and brings people together. That's number one. Number two, I have 3 big lines. One is a better and leaner European Union. That's the institutional setup. Does the Council work well? I don't think so. Should the Commission be reformed? I do think so. Should the European Parliament be strengthened? Yes, definitely. Hilde is in wild agreement. I think we all are. So we have the better and leaner European Union as a system of governance. That's number one. Number two, we need a stronger European Union. We need a European Union that speaks with one voice. I know, coming from the field professionally and politically, how difficult it is, but I want a European identity in our foreign policy. I think it's absolutely crucial when we have this fine line between enlargement and neighborhood and foreign policy. It's very clear that we must have a European approach to regions like the Sahel, like the Middle East, Eastern Europe. What about our friends in Georgia, in Ukraine? I mean, these are people who also have aspirations. Maybe not all of them are liable are eligible for enlargement anytime soon, but we have to respect their ambitions and their aspirations, and we have to support them coming from a European perspective. And there again, our way of doing it, our instruments are not yet what they should be. Unanimity in the Council on Foreign Policy, a rather weak European External Action Service, turf wars between the Council and the Commission, as we could all see in Ankara on the occasion of Sofagate. We have all these things that we can work on. And my last point, better, leaner EU, stronger EU, is a competitive and dynamic EU. Competitive means we have to get the single market together. We have to ensure competition. I'm very proud that we have Margrethe Vestager from our ranks, who really sees to it that competition, even in the digital era, is respected. Because without competition, we will lose our leading position in the world. We will lose the capability to produce the welfare, the level of welfare that our people need for social redistribution, for culture, for all the things that we cherish here in Europe. And that also brings me to the green transformation. We have signed up to the Paris Climate Agreement. We must respect it, and we must develop policies that respect it. But at the same time, and that's important to me, we must manage that transition without losing the support of broad swathes of the population. To me, it was a really big surprise when analyzing the yellow vest demonstrations in France, that the initial spark that set them off, was environmental decisions, was decisions that were tried to move France forward towards the Paris Climate Agreement. We must do it in a way that respects and reflects the preferences of society as a whole. We cannot do it in a way that sort of stretches people too thinly. And so I think the economic and the ecological needs to be thought together. And I think that's a particular responsibility of liberals, something that we should bring to the conference on the future of Europe.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm going to go straight to you, Hilde, to hear
thank you very much.
Any additional thoughts?
Yeah, we see the timeline ticking, so we should be short, I think, because to listen to the people who are following. I'm very honored to be participating here today in this ALDE seminar, of course. And as you know, I'm joining you today as the president of the board of directors of the European Liberal Forum and as a member of the European Parliament. And for those of who might not know this already, the European Liberal Forum is the official political foundation and think tank of the ALDE party. Together with 46 member organizations, we work all over Europe to bring new ideas into the political debate, to provide a platform for discussion and to empower citizens to make their voices heard. And so for me, it's really thrilling that Sunday, the conference on the future of Europe will finally start, because as you all know, it was meant to start a year ago. And of course, due to the conflict of some institutions, we must admit that, also the corona, of course, it was delayed for a year, but also because they were afraid of who was leading the conference on the future of Europe. And it were the liberals who pushed for this conference, because as you know, our name here in the parliament is Renew Europe. So for us, it's very clear. We are convinced Europeans, but we're not in love with Europe as it is. We want to change Europe, make it more adaptable for the people of Europe. So for me, the conference is my liberal child. It's born thanks to our efforts. And so Guy Verhofstadt, and I'm a Belgian citizen, of course, so for me, he is the best liberal all over the world. He will be leading this conference. So for me, I'm very sure that it will be a success, because Guy will push for it. He will not let it be like a PR stunt. And what are the questions that citizens may ask? Everything, if you ask me. There are no taboos. Let them discuss about a smaller commission. Let them discuss about an own budget. Let them discuss about the European army, Alexander. You know, it's my wet dream. I really want to have a European army. And I want it tomorrow, not the day after. Let that be clear. So let them debate about migration. Let them debate about, maybe we can elect the president of the commission in all countries together. Why not? Why not? So for me, everything can be debated. And of course, I even think with two recent events, we should debate everything. First of all, the Brexit. How can a country leave our project? we should ask ourselves that question. That means that we don't sell the project well, and that if we don't change the project, maybe it can be something in the history books after all. So we should defend Europe more and change it more. And secondly, the corona crisis. I think we also have seen, when a pandemic like that happens to us, a country can't do it by itself. It is Europe. People ask me, where is Europe? Well, we don't have the competences to do something, so we can't act. We did a lot. Did we do enough? No, not at all. We let people die in Italy because the hospitals were full. Where is the European spirit and all that? So let us debate the future of Europe open, without taboos. Give us your ideas. Let the voices heard, especially from the young people. I really hope that all the young people, because the future is theirs. So we should fight for a more liberal, more democratic Europe in the future for all our citizens and for all the youngsters. So open up the debate, and I'm open to listen to all your very good ideas. And Guy Verhofstadt is just the office next to me. So if you talk loud enough, he can hear them already. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hilde. And I think that was a very good segue as well to go to Antoinette to hear the young voice.
Thank you very much. I think what is important for young people when it comes to this truly very important democratic exercise is to have inspiration and ambition. And that is why throughout this past difficult year, we at the European Liberal Youth Organization, as the youth organization of the ALDE party, didn't sit around idle, but a year ago we created our own platform for discussion and coming up with ideas and compromise solutions on what we want to see out of this conference for the future of Europe. Because let's not fool each other, there is probably 50 shades of liberalism. There's different ideas flying around, but there are core ideas that we can all agree on, at least within the youth. So at our last two congresses, as a result of this true exercise of listening to each other and mutual understanding and compromise building, not very easy always, we adopted a paper on the institutional reforms we want to see, and then we adopted our vision on the priorities we want to have. And of course, there is a lot that Alexander already mentioned about the global role of the European Union, about reforming the Commission, giving more powers to the Parliament, turning it into a real Parliament as the national ones. Some thoughts on how to make Council work better, the Court of Justice, and so on. Of course, a lot on digital transition, which is important for us. On empowering youth, on fighting climate change and tackling environmental challenges. And I do encourage all of you who are interested to go to our webpage, limec.eu, and take a look at our compromise positions that we've adopted. But why I said inspiration and ambition is because a lot of the young people feel that change is needed, and it's a natural turn of events, and we shouldn't fear it, but are not particularly sure what it exactly needs changing. That is why we came up with those compromise positions, to give an inspiration to young people all over Europe to use the digital platform and give those suggestions, explaining why we think each of them is to take place. And why we need ambition is because after all these voices are heard, if the Conference for the Future of Europe doesn't bring something more concrete, not just a paper to be put on a shelf together with all the other European papers with good ideas, but something concrete to change and transform the way we work in Europe, then this will be a disappointment to everybody. So what we would be insisting is really this: to give inspiration to the European citizens, because they might not know that they want treaty change, but in the end, that might be the effect that they want to get. And also the ambition to really not be afraid of those changes.
Thank you. I would venture so far as to say that we won't just be disappointed, citizens won't just be disappointed, but it's going to massively backfire and undermine the European project, actually, if we launch this whole thing and nothing comes of it. So I think we'll open it up now to questions. And I see that there are a few already popping up in the chat. Daniela will kindly filter them, and I will share the questions. whilst we wait for some live questions to be coming in, there were one or two themes that I would like to pick up on, also because actually they do link very strongly to some of the pre-submitted questions that we got ahead of the event. And I think one really goes to what you were all mentioning in terms of, one, there has to be no taboos, right? Let's not write off already, like the member states saying, oh, well, we can't discuss treaty changes because we don't want this to be another EU sort of constitutional debate. That's not what the citizens care about. Okay, fair enough, but let's look at the substance, and if it results in treaty change, then that's what we should discuss. Let's discuss the institutional reform. The composition of the European Commission is not a new debate. I worked as a parliamentary assistant in the European Parliament when Alexander was an MEP, right? And we had the discussion then as well. And I'm sure that it was happening even before then. So my question, and I'd be keen to hear all of yours, and the question as well that was submitted by the audience ahead of the event. How do we make sure that this time it's different? Like, how do we actually get the member states to agree, right? Because again, these are not new debates. A lot of these solutions have already been discussed and been on the table for many years. How do we overcome that hurdle that is frankly speaking, the member states? I don't know who would like to start, but I would say just take the microphone, and whoever wants to kick it off, or raise. You can also use the raise your hand button in Zoom.
I can say a few words, and I'd be interested to hear from Antoinette and Hilde, because my idea is we can make it different if we make it truly European, in the sense that we take the debates that we have to national capitals as well. I was in the European Parliament, Kate, you know that, for 13 years. I've now been in Berlin in the German Parliament for 3.5. And my experience is that the EU, particularly the EU institutions, to many people here seem to be located on a different planet, which of course is nonsense. Because whenever you approach a particularly important political topic, sooner or later it turns out, well, actually all we're doing here in the German Parliament is transposing European legislation into European law. It happens time and again, but still people are so busy, like in a beehive, running around and looking only at the national dimension, that I would say ALDE should make an effort really to take this to national capitals, to have events there, to invite the media, to create an interest for the conference in national capitals. Because your observation is completely right. Member states, and when we say member states, we're talking about the national fonctionnaire, essentially, think they can get away with yet another, event that does not yield any consequential results. I think we should not miss that opportunity. We have about 1 year, and we should use it. But for that, we need to have it. Yes, the Europe experts in Brussels need to be there, but I think national capitals count as well.
Hilde, Antoinette, any comments?
No, I think Alexander is right. I think we should convince the citizens now to participate in this, because what Alexander said is right. A lot of people don't even know what Europe is doing, because if it's a good law that's coming from Europe, it's a national politician who makes it. That's the way we do it. And when it's a bad law, and you have to vote it in the national parliament, then you say, but it's a fault of Europe. We can't handle it. It's Europe. So Europe is always the bad guy in all this, because when it's something good, then it's the national politicians who do that. And Alexander, I was in a national parliament before. I know, because I did it myself like that. So it's always Europe who is playing the bad guy, and that should stay. That should change. I think we should be more proud of what Europe is doing. But of course, renew Europe. That's for me always the baseline.
And I think this links very well as well to what you're all saying. How do we create these institutional structures where you have the transparency? Because as you're saying, Hilde, we have Brexit, we have Corona, where it's both, right? It's both that there are some competences that are lacking, but and probably in particular in terms of Brexit. It's also because we haven't sold Europe well enough, because there is still this firewall between the national level and the European level, where national politicians can get away with that line. Oh, it's Europe's fault. So I think that's also one thing where having these kind of concrete proposals, how do we actually involve, for instance, maybe the national parliament? That was another question that we got, and Alexander, now that you're sitting in a national parliament, and you did before, how do we do that more concretely? How can you actually involve the national parliaments? Do you think that could be a solution? Or how else do we break down? Don't get me wrong, we love firewalls when we talk about cybersecurity, but from this perspective, if we don't want firewalls, how do we break it down?
I don't honestly know if I want to bring in more national politics in the European Parliament. I want to bring more Europe in the parliaments. I want to bring more the European Parliament in the national parliaments, because here even the debates in the plenary in the European Parliament, when it's really at stake, you see at the votes that people vote like their country and not vote always in the interest of Europe. And so what I really want is that we have a more convinced European reflection with all the parliamentarians. I really hope that the Conference on the Future of Europe will bring more competences to Europe, that we don't always need to go back to all the countries to vote things that are in the European interest. And secondly, I don't know how many years it was ago that Kissinger asked already, I don't know who to call when I want to call Europe. And I think it was also Alexander who referred to the Sofagate. Well, the Sofagate was very clearly Erdogan, who really wanted to play with the two institutions who were there, and who really wanted to give a signal against the woman. But it was also clearly that the two institutions are fighting who is getting the first seat. And that's something that really we should clear out between Europe, and not let Erdogan decide who is going to sit in a chair.
If I may, I have the feeling that in order for this conversation to go forward, we need to take a step back and take a look at the past first. Why did the whole exercise into coming up with a constitution for the European Union fell apart was, in my opinion, because people didn't understand the whole procedure well enough. It didn't feel like it's coming from people, and this is why I have the feeling that the digital platform this time was a proper way forward. And it's up to all of us as European citizens now to use this platform massively, and put our thoughts and ideas in the digital platform, because this is the only way to convince the member states that citizens actually do want a change. And they might really not understand that the change that they need is changing Article 300 and I don't know what of the treaty, but they can explain what exactly is the change they want. And in the end, elected politicians are elected by their voters. If they see that there is a massive push from their voters across Europe to go in one direction or the other, I would hope that they will be lenient to listen. It is to a great degree up to us, and especially to young people, to have this push and say what we want exactly, and use this grassroots movement in order to have the explanation of what we want. But national parliaments also have to be involved in my opinion as well. And I fully agree with what Hilde said, that we need to bring more Europe on the national stage, because
that's the way I meant it, Tonetta. That's exactly what I meant. I'm a national parliamentarian now, and some of my colleagues always say, well, we need to have national parliaments at the parliamentarians at the European level. Well, we're busy enough as it stands. The point, it should be the other way around. And I think, Kate, and that is something that I think Hans would also have appreciated, if we from the ALDE Bureau sent a letter to all our liberal European affairs spokespeople in all national parliaments, giving them a heads up, listen, the conference is going on. What are you doing? What is your parliamentary group doing? In the Belgian parliament, in the Bulgarian parliament, in the Spanish parliament, you know, we send just to make our national colleagues aware that there's something going on, and then suggest to them to use the tools that they have as parliamentarians. They can ask their national government. So what exactly is it that you are doing for the Conference of Europe in our country? So we bring the European debate to the national level with the levers and I used the word muscle earlier, you know, with the muscles that we have there, because I think that will be required to avoid what was the starting point of your question. How do we avoid that it's a conference that has no consequences? And I think that's this dual approach. I think we as a bureau can take a lead there. And if we are the ones doing it first, maybe EPP and S&D will follow. And all of a sudden, we get this thing, you know, much more broadly recognized, much more broadly than it is now.
I think that's a really excellent idea. I've taken note, and I think this will supplement very well as well the town halls that we're planning as part of our action plan.
Kate, can I say something else? Because Madeleine Jacobson has asked a wonderful question from the north of Sweden. Actually, by the way, the weather here in Germany is what I imagine the north of Sweden to be in late December. But what Madeleine asks is you know, how can we get closer to one another? And as an elected official, take it in your own hands. Do events. Have a meeting, a town hall meeting on the conference. Make it an open. Just as I think, Hilde said it. Everybody can ask anything and everything. Invite them to the town hall and have them say, you know, and if they want to rant, let them rant, because, you know, that's also useful, because we learn where we must must get better. So I would really encourage you, Madeleine, to you know, have an open town hall. Well, you know, always under Corona circumstances, obviously, but have a meeting that allows those citizens who care to have their voices heard. I think that's the first and most important step.
No, thank you, Alexander. I think those are very valid points as well. And excellent. We can just tick one of the questions off the list here, because indeed, I would like to move a little bit now to some of the issues as well that are being raised. And I think that the first question that came in, actually, and it links very well to what you were saying, Antonetta, about it's also about governments will do what they can feel the voters care about. So one question here relates to climate change, right? Brexit and Corona are minor problems in relation to climate change. And it also links, Alexander, to what you were saying about the liberal way, right? To make sure that the ecological and economic transition go hand in hand. How do we make the necessary immediate steps to fight global warming in a liberal, sustainable way? And I don't know, Alexander, whether you want to kick that off, because you did sort of mention it. If you have any more concrete ideas you'd like to share, and of course, Hilde and Antonetta as well, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'm a big fan of the idea of a CO2 budget. Allocate a certain amount of CO2 that can be emitted, or methane, depending on what you want to do. And then have that sort of budget, you know, go down, have degressive, design a degressive budget. I am not a fan, to be very clear, of detailed regulation of this industry or that industry or this product or that product. I believe we should have an overall approach, and it's a debate we have here, you know, in the run-up to the national elections, how to do it best. And our approach is one that would use market dynamics, technological advances, pricing signals in a way that would allow, for example, a reformed ETS to really kick in and jumpstart the efforts that we would need. The reason I personally like that approach is because it does not prescribe where you do it. But it would simply work, because you address the very issue CO2 rather than addressing the issue of combustion engine or mopeds or what have you. That's I think the important point. That's number one. Number two is, I think we do need to think about this globally. We need a global approach, because it's important what we do in Europe. Do not get me wrong. But what China does, what the United States do, what Russia does, what Brazil does, I mean, really large countries, is also important. And so I think our foreign policy should have a very definite climate bent to it. And we should report not only on political dynamics and economics and human rights, we should also report, for example, our EU delegations around the world should report what is country X doing specifically, not just in words, to meet its nationally determined contribution under the Kyoto Protocol. I mean, that's so we can use this and leverage our knowledge globally, because at the end of the day, it's one climate that we're protecting, not separate ones.
Hilda, Antonessa, any of you have any?
Well, it's quite obviously for the youth, fighting climate change is one of the most important topics. In fact, we're kind of insisting that the European leaders at least come up with a contingency plan of what do we do with the consequences, because the consequences are starting to manifest. It's not on a if we don't do anything, maybe something will happen. Consequences are starting to manifest. So a contingency plan is something that we've been insisting on. But more importantly, well, one of the fragments is we want more awareness raising on sustainable development and climate issues, but not just to young people, which is something that is normally met as a call for in European documents, rather across generations, because young people are pretty much very well aware of the impacts on the environment and what we should do, you know, the waste of water resources and whatnot. But it's much more difficult to convince specifically the oldest generation to do things differently than what they're used to. Another thing that we insist on is using the ETS system and expanding it to all carbon emitting sectors, making it, because it's a good example. It's a very, very good tool that we have. So why not make it stronger and expand it further? And further, something that Alexander already said, for us, it's absolutely a must to take over all our good initiatives and good tools and have a global push for global action, because otherwise, us isolated, Europe is not an isolated island. It is happening elsewhere. So indeed, a global action is of utmost importance for us as well. And using the international trade system would be one way to do that.
I don't know if you, yeah, here I am. But I think a lot has been said. And I think, of course, if you say Brexit or minor problems compared to climate, yes and no. I think climate, it's really an important problem that we have to tackle. And I think Europe is doing a lot for that, and also the national states. But like Alexander said, it's of course a worldwide problem. Eh? We can do our utmost. But of course, if China, Brazil, and others don't help us to fight the climate change, we will not win that fight. So it's a worldwide problem. For me, why I was saying that the Brexit is a problem for me is because it really harms that the country leaves a project which do a lot for the citizens. And that's for me the biggest problem of Europe. How can a country leave a club of which you are a very long time member and which gives you a lot of advantages? That was for me the spirit behind my words on that. But climate, of course, it's a priority. We have the Green Deal. We have a lot of things. Although I must say that the Commissioner, Frans Timmermans, I don't see him that much. I think in the previous term, we saw him more. I think on the Green Deal, he's not so active as before. But that's my personal opinion, of course.
No, thank you. So maybe just jumping off the back of Brexit, because this is also a question that has come in, not just for the UK, but there are quite a few questions that relate, and then taking a jumping off point in different countries and different regions. But there are quite a few questions. How will contributions be sought and integrated from outside of Europe? So, of course, the UK, which until recently was a member, but also for countries that are aspiring to become members or to be associated. So, Ukraine, for instance, or Western Balkans. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on how you think the Conference of Future of Europe should address any input and collaboration with countries on the parameter of the EU.
May I start this time? Because we're very strong on the Western Balkans note, for example. This conference is supposed to, the topic of the conference is the Conference for the Future of Europe. And in our eyes, as the youth, the future of Europe includes the Western Balkan countries, includes Ukraine, it includes a number of countries that, belong in terms of values and in terms of vision, in terms of European way of life, belong to Europe, but are in the process of joining. So if we're going to really have in-depth conversation of what the future of Europe should be, we need to include, for example, the Western Balkan countries, the countries at least that are in the process of accession currently. If we say we're discussing the future, but we don't see you in this future, then what signal are you sending to those countries, really? That is why, in our view, as the youth, we need to have a proper platform for participation, at least as observers of the countries currently in the process of accession. Otherwise, we're lying to themselves and lying to ourselves as well.
Thank you. That's very clear. Alexander, did you have any comments? I saw you unmuted yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I said it in my opening remarks. The European way of life is one that is open. And openness means, particularly looking at the Western Balkans, Ukraine, at our friends with European aspirations, liberal aspirations. I do not know. I sort of, a different thing is now the formal way of doing it in the organization of the conference. I do not know yet how it's going to be set up. But we, as the ALDE party, we should make sure that that we hear the voices of our friends from these countries, from the UK, from the Lib Dems. I mean, it would be completely ludicrous for us to discuss the future of Europe without listening to the Lib Dems. It would never cross my mind. And the same goes in the easterly direction. So we as ALDE, we will clearly do it, integrate our contributions when it comes to the formal contribution in a way that reflects voices from countries that are not member states of the European Union.
Thank you very much. Hilda, I don't know whether you had any thoughts on this? So we are actually coming to the end of our webinar. I'm very sorry that we didn't manage to go through all of the questions. I know that there's still some unanswered ones. I also note that there are a lot of not questions, but ideas and comments and suggestions. What I would very much urge the audience to do is to go on the ALDE Party website to our section that will now be launched at this live after this event. And we actually have a tab where you can share your ideas. So please go in there and share your ideas so that we have a record and that it's not lost just because we unfortunately didn't have the time to go through it today. Now, before closing off, I did want to just give each of the speakers the opportunity, 1 minute, to just, again, try to sum up what you see as the key success criteria, and also really the advice that you would bring to our audience, how to engage in this going forward, again, so that we really make sure that this will be a genuine listening exercise. And maybe we do it in reverse order this time, and we start with you, Antoinette, then we do Hilda, and then we do Alexander.
Thank you very much. Well, I think I started with our criteria, and that's ambition. That is not fear from change. That is not running away from the ideas that citizens have proposed. I would call all decision makers really to look at this exercise as a treasure box for ideas. and to really not be afraid to pick the ambitious ideas out of this treasure box. As per everybody out there, the people that are feeling passionate about Europe, just go to the Oude Party webpage, give your ideas, go to the LIMEC webpage, take ideas from what we've already enumerated as our ideas on the institutional reform and on topical priorities, get those ideas and submit them on the digital platform for the future of Europe. We're given the floor in order to be heard. Let's make a wave and really push for being heard.
Thank you very much. Hilde?
Very nice words, of course, of Antoinette. So I think indeed we have to push that all the citizens feel that they can be heard. I hope that we take the idea of Alexander with us, and that we go with ALDE and with Renew and with ELF and everybody together, that we will go to all country houses, to all cities in Europe, and explain to people why it's so important to participate in this project, because it's about our future, and our future will be or European or will not be. That's for me very clear. So we as the Liberals, it's our child, this conference on the future of Europe. So let's promote this child, and maybe Alexander, together with ELF, maybe we can do a digital road trip to through Europe and listen to the people's voices, and we can bring them over to Guy Verhofstadt and push them to give their ideas. And like I say, for me, there are no taboos. We must discuss everything that citizens want to discuss. I'm a really convinced European, convinced Democrat, and we will do that. And maybe we can call the digital road trip that Hans is leading us through Europe with his positivism and with his working power. Maybe that's an idea to do in honor of Hans. So thank you very much.
Hilde, that's a wonderful idea. I think a digital road trip on the occasion of the conference through the capitals of Europe, in memory of Hans. I think it's a wonderful legacy. We should do that. Kate asked what our criteria for success are. I would like to take up what Antoinette just said. The conference should become a treasure trove for ideas to make Europe better.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, we would also, of course, want to see, a couple of years down the road, some real change. It takes time in Europe. We know that processes take time. But if some of these ideas are taken out of the treasure trove and then, implemented through the constitutional processes, and we make Europe better and leaner and more competitive and more dynamic and stronger, I think the conference will have been a success. And the second question was how to do it. We have Hilde's idea, the digital road trip in Hans' memory. And there is the other idea that I would like to repeat. If you are an office holder, do invite your citizens. Have them come and have them do, what we just said, develop ideas, listen what they think works well and what they think does not work so well, where improvements are needed. But if you're a citizen, call on your office holders, address your MPs, your local MPs, ask them what they are doing on the conference on the future of Europe. Ask your mayors, ask people who hold elected office in your region, in your country, and ask them, because many of them will possibly not be aware, but the moment they have a letter on their table, an email in their mailbox, or a WhatsApp on their phone, they will go like, oh yeah, right, I should do something about it. And that's exactly what the reaction should be. So I think this is the way forward. And with that, Kate, I'm giving it back to you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And with that, I don't have too much to add. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. Thank you very much to all of you who listened in. Thank you again very much for all of your excellent questions. Go and do what Alexander, Hilde, and Antoinette advised you to do, and share your ideas as well on our digital platform, where we also link to the official Future of Europe platform. Be in touch, let us know what you think, and this is just really the very first step in our action plan. So we will be continuing this process throughout the year, and I look forward to continuing the discussion with all of you. Thank you very much and have a pleasant rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.